Welcome to Clone Brewing, the YouTube channel where we brew clone recipes of major commercial beers. Today we're going to be brewing one of, if not the best stout ever to come out of Ireland. No, it's not Guinness, it's Murphy's Irish Stout. The recipe is taken from Clone Brew's recipes for 200 commercial beers. I'm really excited about this one because it's going to be the first time I've ever used nitro on a stout. So let's take a look at the recipe. We're going to input the ingredients into Brewfather and then we'll be back with some footage of the brew day. The recipe as it appears in the book is for a steeping and extract recipe, but they do also give a handy conversion to all grain as well, which is what we'll be doing. A little bit about the beer. Murphy's Irish Stout hails from Cork in Ireland and has been brewed there since 1856. For me, its most defining characteristic is the slight aroma of toffee, caramel, hints of coffee, and the taste is smooth with a mild bitterness and a flavor of roasted toasted malt and a finish that is clean and mild. So some of the specs that we're going to be looking for is an original gravity of between 1.042 and 1.043. We're looking for an IBU of 35, an SRM of 77, which roughly converts into EBC of 152, and an expected ABV of 4.2%. Murphy's nowadays actually is 4.0%, so they have lowered their ABV. We're looking for an expected final gravity of 1.009 to 1.010. And as I mentioned, this recipe is set out for an extract recipe, but they do provide this handy all grain method in the bottom here. So what it's asking us to do is to mash 2.8 kilograms of British two-row pale malt with a specialty grains at 66.7 degrees Celsius, which we'll call 67, and that mashes for 90 minutes. It then asks us to add 7.2 hop bittering units, which is 20% less than the extract recipe of the bittering hops, and the cane sugar for 90 minutes of the boil. And then finally to add the flavor hops and the Irish moss for the last 15 minutes of the boil. So what does that all mean? So what we're looking for is 255 grams of roasted barley, 170 grams of British chocolate malt, and 113 grams of 55 degrees Lovibond British crystal malt, which is essentially light crystal that we will be using. In conjunction with that, we're looking for 227 grams of cane sugar. And then in terms of hop additions, I'm not too sure what 7.2 hop bittering units are, or even how to subtract 20% of that, because we're going to be using essentially different alpha acids in our hops, but we're looking for around 28 grams of Target and 7 grams of East Kent Goldings, and then finally 1 tablespoon of Irish moss. We'll be using a Whirlfloc tablet instead of that. In terms of the yeast, we're going to go with the first choice as recommended here, which is the Y yeast 1084 Irish Ale yeast. The strange characteristics of this is we're going with a 90-minute mash, which wouldn't be what I'd normally do, but I'll stick to what is recommended here, and also a 90-minute boil as well. So now that we have our ingredients, let's input those into Brewfather and see what we come up with. When we go across to Brewfather, the first thing that we need to take note of is to make sure that our batch volume is correct at 19 liters and the boil time is set to 90 minutes. After inputting all the ingredients with the exact amounts outlined in the recipe, it does give me a projected ABV of 4.5% and an original gravity of 1.045. So both of those numbers are above where we're hoping to get to. So to alter that slightly, I'm going to use this original gravity tool here in Brewfather and set my original gravity to 1.042 and click on scale, and that will bring down our original gravity to around about 4.1%, so more or less in where we're looking to get to, 4.1, 4.2%. The next thing to take note of is the hop additions. So I actually couldn't find Target hops, so I googled what is a good replacement for Target, and I was recommended to use Fuggles. So by using 28 grams of Fuggles and 7 grams of the recommended East Kent Goldings, Fuggles at 90 minutes and the East Kent at 15 minutes, it's giving me an IBU of 25, and of course we're looking for 35 IBUs. So again, I'm going to use this converter tool, up that to 35 IBUs, scale, and now I'm getting 41.5 grams of Fuggles and still the 7 grams of East Kent Goldings. Looking at the yeast, we're going to go with the Y yeast 1084 as previously mentioned, and for fermentation we will ferment at 20 degrees and hopefully not for 14 days. Hopefully we will be a little bit faster than that. Let's not focus on carbonation because this time we will be using nitro gas for the first time. Really looking forward to that. So I'm not going to focus too much on what the CO2 levels should be in the beer. For the water profile, let's click in here to calculate. We will be using a source water of reverse osmosis, and the target profile we're going to go for is Dublin stouts and dark ales. Now, to clarify, Murphy's Irish Stout is not brewed in Dublin, but I still feel that this is a really good water profile for a stout, especially a dry Irish stout. All we need to do then is click auto. It tells us what we need to add into the mash and the sparge. We'll save those adjustments to our recipe, and it tells us that we need 0.38 grams of calcium chloride, 0.47 of Epsom salt, and 0.77 of gypsum, all going into the mash, and then 0.51 of calcium chloride, 0.63 of Epsom salt, and 1.03 grams of gypsum going into the sparge. And as well as that, we will be using the World Flock tablet for the final 15 minutes. In terms of the mash profile, the recipe recommends 90-minute mash. I'm going to slightly alter that. I'm going to mash in at 67 degrees Celsius for 75 minutes. It will take me 5 minutes to get up to 77 degrees Celsius, and we'll hold that for 10 minutes for mash out. Finally, in terms of the water, we need 11.92 liters for the mash water and 15.91 of sparge water. So now that we've got all the planning done, let's get brewing. So we've reached the boil. Time for the first hop addition. I've set the timer there for 90 minutes. So in with the first hops. And the recipe also suggests adding the cane sugar at this point for 90 minutes of the boil. I've never added cane sugar at the start of the boil before in any beer. Normally you would add it at the end to prevent it sticking to the bottom, but I'm going to go with what the recipe says and add in the cane sugar. I'm going to do this quite slowly in stages over the next minute or two, just to give it a chance to dissolve and not all float to the bottom and stick. I took a pre-boil sample just before reaching boil, so I'm going to see what it comes in at. We're aiming for 1.035, but I did take the sample before adding the sugar, so I'm not sure if the calculations are going to be correct on that, but we shall see. That's coming in at 1.034, so just 1 point below where we're supposed to. But like I said, I took that reading just before adding the sugar. We're looking for a final gravity of 1.045, sorry, 1.042. So we'll see where we end up. So we were looking for a post-boil gravity of 1.042, and it looks to me like we've come in at 1.044. I'll verify that with the tilt hydrometer in a second, but 1.044, slightly above where we're looking to come in, but all good. Well, that's it all transferred across. It's currently sitting at around about 18 degrees Celsius, 18.2. So I'm going to give it about 15-20 minutes to heat up a little bit closer to maybe 19 and a half before I pitch the yeast. Right, so it's taken about an hour or so and it's up to 18.9 degrees Celsius. So I think it's safe to pitch the yeast now. The temperature we're looking for is 20 degrees Celsius to ferment that, but I think we're safe to pitch around about 19 and let it just rise up naturally. So overall, very happy with the brew day. No major incidents. I was actually surprised that with adding the sugar, the cane sugar at 90 minutes, there was no burning at the bottom of the Grainfather either. So everything went well. Really looking forward to trying this beer out in a few weeks. as I mentioned before, first time using beer gas or nitro, so hopefully that'll turn out well as well. But see you in a couple of weeks. We're back with the taste comparison between the Murphy's Irish Stout and the clone recipe. I am hugely excited about this one because, as previously mentioned, this is the first time ever trying a beer on nitro or mixed gas. So, as you can probably see on the screen at the moment, I brewed this beer on May 23rd. It finished fermenting within 4 days, so exceptionally quick. The recipe was predicting a final gravity of 1.010. We ended up at 1.012, so the ABV ended up at 4.2%, which is where we were aiming for in the first place. I left it in the fermenter for further 3 days just to make sure that the gravity was stable, and then I kegged the beer. After that, I put it into the kegerator, let it chill for 2 days. I then hooked it up to the beer gas mix, which is 75% nitro, 25% CO2. I set the PSI on the regulator to 36 PSI. Left that there for 3 days up until today, and then I've lowered the pressure on the PSI to 30 for serving essentially. So I was looking for a lot of information online about what the correct pressure is for beer gas. It's quite difficult to find, so I went with what a friend of mine from my local brewing club told me. He uses 36 psi for 3 days and then lowers to 30, and that's what we've gone with. So let's go ahead with the taste test. What is really impressive about this beer is it's taken 13 days from grain to glass. Look at that wonderful cascade. It looks delicious. So we'll let that set and we'll pop the can. So this is a can with a widget inside, so it replicates the effect of the nitro gas from the can. So now that both beers have settled, they finished their cascade, let's have a look in terms of comparison. I'm trying to hold those up to the light in terms of colour. Pretty similar, I'd say, in terms of colour. When you hold them up to the light, you get that kind of hue of red in the bottom of the glass. So that's what I would typically expect to see. Let's start off with the actual Murphy's in terms of aroma. I would describe that as soft, roasty, little bit of caramel, toffee in there. Really nice aroma. And now for the clone. Oh, it looks beautiful. That's amazingly similar. It's really difficult to tell the two of those apart. Okay, so Very, very similar on aroma. Let's try the taste. Just what I expect from Murphy's Irish Stout. I've said before, and it's probably a controversial opinion, but I think this is probably one of, if not the best of the Irish Stouts. So what type of flavours in there? I'm expecting that kind of toasted, roasted, caramelly, toffee type flavours, and that comes through really prominently. Nice creamy head. Body is a little bit on the lighter side, I would say. But now for the taste test. As you can see, the clone pushed out through using that beer gas, still retaining its wonderful creamy head. So let's try for the taste. That is a really, really good clone. And you know what? I think that one's even better than the original. Really, really nice beer. Very, very, very similar. The only difference, I would say, slight little bit more bitterness in that clone. But overall, in terms of taste, I'm getting the same type of taste of that toffee, caramel, a little bit of roastiness in there as well. Very, very, very similar to the canned version of Murphy's Draft Irish Stout. Look, I'm absolutely ecstatic with this. I'm really, really happy with it. It's gone really, really well. This is a beer I will be definitely brewing again. And now that I have the nitro set up with my kegerator, I can produce this over and over again. So, cheers.